Hello there everybody, this is WarBB13 here, and welcome back to our reaction video. It has been a while since the last time I made a reaction video or a reaction stream, and so I figured I may as well get back into making reaction content, and by doing so, I will be reacting to how World of Warcraft is improving its UI. I've always been interested in World of Warcraft, because believe it or not, there are World of Warcraft players in Lord of the Rings Online, and they have been telling me things. But then I also have friends who also plays World of Warcraft, and they tell me things. And so I figured I may as well have a personal perspective by reacting to this video. But if I am right, or if I'm wrong, or you want to add stuff to the conversation, please let me know in the comment section below. So anyways, let's get straight to it.
Welcome to a special edition of WOWCAST, where we're going to talk about a patch 11.1.7 feature, and then a broader discussion about add-ons in World of Warcraft in general. I'm Dratnos, World of Warcraft content creator.
I'm Max, I'm the raid leader of Team Liquid, the WoW Guild, and a content creator as well.
I'm Ian Hazakostas, game director on WoW, and it's a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Very excited to be here. So what are we doing in 11.1.7?
A whole bunch of fun stuff, but one of the features that we're extra excited about is a new UI option that we're adding called Rotation Assist, which is really...
Okay, Rotation Assist. I have been hearing stories about the Rotation Assist. And from what it looks like to some people is that it plays the game for them. I truly do not know if that is a thing, but once again, it's one of those things I gotta have perspectives on. So please let me know in the comment section below on what you think about the one button Rotation Assist. But I'm definitely intrigued by this, because in Lord of the Rings Online, we don't exactly have a auto rotation assist. Because basically, in Lord of the Rings Online, the rotations are basically very minimalistic. Like for instance, I'm a captain main. You all may have seen a few of my videos. And the captain's rotation is basically this. There's actually 3 rotations to a captain, but the first and most primary rotation is the battle shout, the sure strike, and a devastating blow. That's the primary rotation. And then there's a secondary rotation, which I call the situational rotation because it's an AoE rotation. And that is battle shout, sure strike, and pressing attack. Pressing attack is a AoE attack. Like, I can attack multiple foes with it. And then if you are in the Captain Redline spec, which is known as Lead to Charge, or in this case, Redline, or DPS if you're a World of Warcraft player. And that is that you want to put, I do believe if I remember correctly, it was Telemark. You can do that at any time. I normally just use Telemark before I attack an enemy. And it would be, let's see, it was Telemark, and then Blade of Elendil, and then Shadow's Laminate. That is the 3rd rotation. It's not like 12 buttons that you have to press in order to do one rotation. It is basically 3 separate rotations. And if you want to make it even smaller, is that if you want to go on over to the Captain Tank tree, which is Yellow Line, also known as Leader of Men, all you have to do mostly is the Battle Shout, Sure Strike, and Devastating Blow. Or you can do the secondary one if you are in a AoE kind of situation, which once again, which is Battle Shout, Sure Strike, and Pressing Attack. And that's it. And same thing with the blue line, which is also known as Hands of Healing. You only do those two rotations that I told you. Everything else is secondary. Unless there's something to a captain that I don't exactly know about because it has been a while since I made Lotro content, so things could change from time to time. But anyways, let's get back to the video.
Designed to help players who are maybe picking up a new spec or want some guidance.
Okay, enables the highlights that suggest the spell to cast. Assisted highlight would only suggest visible spells. Okay, so I am guessing this would definitely be useful for people who has difficulties remembering their rotation, or that there could be people that could use this as an accessibility thing, like for instance, sometimes in games, especially when it comes to keyboard and mouse, my hands might not be that quick in order for me to use the buttons. So normally, I am what they call a clicker. That I click on the buttons that I need for my captain to do. But I think that if this is going to be a thing, then this might be able to help me with my buttons if I decide to do keyboard and mouse.
Guidance on what abilities they should be using when, without having to turn to third-party add-ons for it. So we've seen that, as an add-on.
Oh, I'm sorry for pausing this thing again. I had to mention add-ons. I have been hearing rumors, or I have been talking to people on World of Warcraft videos, and I told them, from my perspective as a Lotro player, having a mandatory list of add-ons just to play the game is nuts. Like, I don't know how many add-ons you have to install in order for you to just enjoy the game. Like for me, if I were to have an add-on, it would possibly be like maybe Reshade, so I can make some awesome thumbnails for videos, and also maybe graphically enhance the game in order for me to improve the quality of the stream. Or I would have a UI skin. And that's it. So yeah, I will only have those two things, and that's it. And I have been receiving rumors about a DPS tracker add-on that you can use it to track your own DPS, but at the same time, people can look at your other teammates' DPS, which is nuts to me. But anyways, I'm hoping that I am wrong about that, but please let me know in the comment section.
Called Hekili that is very popular with a lot of players. We're basically building in a very similar version of that into the base UI that you can opt into. That will, no matter.
Okay, so they're basically going to put these add-ons that people like into the game, which is a good thing because you normally don't know what to expect when it comes to mods or add-ons and stuff like that. They could have viruses in them. Hence why I am careful when it comes to mods that I put in my computer. I mean, when it comes to game mods. Like, if I want to mod Elder Scrolls Morrowind, then I really wanted to be careful about what mods I'm going to download, because some of them might have a virus in them.
Or what DPS spec you're playing, highlight the recommended next ability given your current energy, what's going on around you, and so forth. One extra thing that we're also going to do, which maybe goes a bit beyond what the add-ons can do, is also have a one-button version of that, where there'll be like a key button.
Okay, now this is what I have. This is what I thought. A single button assistant. Okay, repause. Okay. I'm possibly going to make this into a screenshot for the thumbnail so people would get the idea that I'm not clickbaiting them into thinking that I am reacting to another kind of video. But anyways, I've been hearing stories about the one-button assistant. Like, it plays the game for you. I don't know if that's a fact, but I do believe I would love it as an accessibility thing. Like, what if a person cannot master their rotation? What if a person is not used to their rotation? What if a person who is not quick with their hands to do the rotation? So yeah, so maybe the one-button assistant would definitely help out with people's situations. More of an accessibility feature, which is awesome, nonetheless.
Bind that if you just want almost an auto rotation, you can opt into that, and it will just automatically cast the next recommended ability in the sequence. There'll be a small GCD penalty associated with that, but we want to make sure that this is for accessibility purposes.
Okay, so GCD, I'm guessing that means global cooldown. So if you were to use a one-button rotation assist, you're gonna have a little penalty when it comes to that. Okay.
That it's there.
So luckily for me, my captain rotations is easy.
For people who maybe just honestly aren't interested in the gameplay of like mastering their spec. They want to explore Azeroth and experience the story.
Okay, so basically he is saying is that I can only assume that he's saying that you create the character, but you don't necessarily want to learn your class or what spec you want to go into, that you're just there just to play. I guess a part of me does understand that. There could be some new players that want to experiment with their class, so having that one button rotation assist would give them an idea on how the rotation is done. I could definitely see that. And it looks like that he... Okay, never mind. I'm phasing out now. So many ideas. Alright, here we go.
And the mechanics kind of get in the way of that sometimes. This should be for them. Ideally, this is not a tool where someone is like being told by their raid leader to stop trying to DPS manually and just turn on the one button.
Oh, now I see that. Let me see.
Button mode to meet some DPS check. That we want to give you the tools to kind of go through that organic progression.
Okay, so I see now. This one button rotation assist would definitely possibly will be mandatory if you want to join a group. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay. I think I could possibly see the issue here, but at the same time, it's an option, so people don't have to use the option, so it's just there for when people need it. But when it comes to group content, the raid leader or everyone else in the group would say, "Hey man, I'm just going to put on the one button rotation assist." Yeah, I could definitely see that becoming an issue. But I think it's going to be good nonetheless. But it's entirely up to the people themselves if they want to use it or not.
Naturally.
Great. But so the rotation assist doesn't come with a penalty or anything like that. That's just we're going to show you what your next button is.
Exactly.
Right.
It's very similar to the Hakili add-on. It's kind of reflecting, just the latest.
Okay, so there is no penalty, but did he say back there in a few moments ago that there was going to be a penalty? Unless I misheard that. Something about a penalty on a GCD?
Kind of established theory crafting, and it's something that we would continue to update, with spec changes and class changes over time. Ideally, it all's born out of the idea that we've seen a valuable tool that players feel like they should be looking outside the game to download, and we'd rather just reduce the barriers to that and make it available to everyone.
Okay, yeah, because there's two parts of it, right? Like the advanced is.
Yeah, once again, it feels like from when I was talking to World of Warcraft content creators, from in their comment section, and some other World of Warcraft players in that comment section has been telling me is that there are some mandatory add-ons to add. And from what I remember, that it was a list. That's nuts.
I want to really go into this as the one button thing, but that's not necessarily everyone that's going to use this. Like, I think this game, especially new players getting into it, there's a lot going on within a particular class, and you can be a little lost trying to figure out exactly what I should be pressing. So even just using it as like as a guide to start learning your class and move off of it eventually, but just having a base understanding of what actually should I be doing at a base level of this.
That's really exactly the motivation on our end. I mean, especially with warbands and War Within, we see lots and lots more alts, and leveling is pretty quick. You got a bunch of Warbound until equipped gear that you're passing over to a new character.
Okay. Warbands from the War Within. That's similar. I don't know if it's exactly like it, but in Lord of the Rings Online, we call them roving threats. Roving threats is basically like raid bosses outside of the raid, and you and your group, you just go out there into the world and you freaking kick their butts. Last time I remembered I did a warband or a roving threat was during the times of the Riders of Rohan expansion, when we were going up against, I forgot that person's name, but it was near Highbolt. We had to defeat this one person, and we get a silver present box that we have to get in order to get some very special loot. I think that's how it is in World of Warcraft, the War Within, about those warbands. I'm not sure. Please let me know in the comment section.
Character, and just jumping into their full rotation, who never played the spec seriously before, can be a pretty serious undertaking. And for some people, this may be enough for them, and that's fine too. But we recognize that there's so much. WoW has such a high skill ceiling that just recommending what the next ability isn't going to really remove that.
A high skill ceiling. Okay, so there, World of Warcraft has a high skill ceiling. Okay, does Lord of the Rings Online have a high skill ceiling? I don't know exactly. I have been a captain mage for I don't know how many years, because I still haven't got my character up to the max level in order for me to start alts. But I think the only class that I would know that may have a high skill ceiling would possibly be Lore Master. The Lore Master is a class that does crowd control. So basically the tactician of the group. And as far as I know, maybe Runekeeper could be a high skill class as well. But definitely I'm going to have to say Hunter as well. That has a high skill class. Depends on the spec that you use as a hunter. Like, if you really want to do some damage, you have to go red light, which means you're basically a sniper. And snipers, I do believe they have to stand still. Or sit still. Or stand still or sit still in order to really do damage to the target. But when it comes to Hunter Blue Line, you can move and shoot and anything like a Call of Duty would have done. And then, of course, there's Trapper of Foes, which is a Hunter-Trapper spec, where you can place traps and you can basically lure enemies into said traps. And so, yeah, that's also a highest skill line spec.
That or fully solve that. There's still the muscle memory that you need to form, and then all of the nuances of, like, we might have a recommendation for a rotation that makes sense if you're fighting a target demi, you're fighting patchwork, but when you need to plan around the fact that you're going to have to move in 4 seconds, that's a whole different layer of skill that still rests with players.
Yeah, I know when I'm trying to, play a new spec for the first time or haven't played it in years, it often feels like I've got like a 30-minute checklist of, okay, I got to set up my keybinds, got to make sure, oh, this ability's changed since 2 expansions ago.
So he has to adjust his keybinds. Okay.
Oh, I got to rebind that, and then I got to go and read some guides and figure out how all my new rotation works, and oh, here's how the new set bonus works. So
World of War. Okay, so let me get this straight. Do any of you who plays World of Warcraft, do you do that? Like when a new when a rework of a class, and in order for you to learn the rework of the class, you have to look at guides. That is nuts, man. It's like, to me as a Lotro player, I would experiment with the new class builds. Like, for instance, a long time ago, Defense of Middle Earth was its own separate button, and it did not last the entire day. Well, it did not last the entire day. Basically, the Defense of Middle Earth is a part of motivational speech. Motivational speech increases your morale or health by 10%. And Defense of Middle Earth is basically, it increases your group stats, you and your group stats by scalable levels. Like, for instance, my person is level 131, then I would increase my group stats by, from what I remembered, it was 131, but I guess they could have scaled it up and when I was gone from making Lotro content. But yeah, I would experiment to find out what is the best way to use the class, to develop my own style and how I want to do things. Like, if I'm going to be the captain tank, I would just put down Noble Mark first, and then I would experiment how a new tank build would do. But that's just me. If you all want to go ahead and look up guides and stuff, that is fine.
I could see it being really nice to just have this is a way to jump into some content to do with your friends and have it work out nice and easily. One thing that jumps out to me is that a lot of the content I'd want to do would be like delves or keys. And in either of those cases, there's a lot of AoE.
Yeah.
Is this good?
Okay, I'm sorry for pausing, but he mentioned delves. In Lord of the Rings Online, there is indeed a thing that you World of Warcraft players call Mythic Plus. But in Lord of the Rings Online, we call that delving. But instead of mythic keys in World of Warcraft, in Lord of the Rings Online, I call them mythic key stones. And I'm still trying to figure out about the mythic keys in World of Warcraft, but so far I can only figure out that if you fail your run, the key degrades. I'm not exactly sure, but please let me know in the comment section. And in Lord of the Rings Online, definitely going to call them mythic key stones, and basically if you fail your run, your key does not get degraded. You basically get a cracked version of that key, and then you head on over to a person that is doing the I'm gonna call that person the shopkeep. Yeah, a shopkeeper. You give the shopkeeper your cracked mythic keystone, and then he or she will give you a new one, and then you go in and try out a run again. So basically, you're not degrading your key. If you want, I'll go. If you want, once I upload the video, I will put the link to the patch notes of the Lotro Mythic Delving in the description.
Gonna have a, are we gonna detect whether we're fighting 3 targets, 5 targets, and is it gonna cast my Arcane Explosion instead of my Arcane Blast, or is it just always gonna be a single target?
It's not just single target. There is, some sense of, how many enemies are within your range, in front of you, etc. And so that will affect the recommendations. Again, the goal is not optimal. The goal is not like this is gonna, okay, everyone's always gonna get perfect parses and so forth going forward.
Okay, that's the thing I've been trying to. That is the thing that I said before. Captains have a separate rotation, once I said so before. The Battle Shout, the Sure Strike, and the Pressing Attack. The Pressing Attack is the AoE, but we also got another AoE called Routing Cry. And I mostly prefer that during a critical event or a defeat enemy response, because in Captain Tank line, which is yellow line, you can basically AoE stun your enemies for a few seconds, which is exactly what you need for your group to go ham on DPS while the enemies are stunned. And the Routing Cry does damage as well, so basically, it's a win-win.
But as a baseline, this should be, it should be useful the same way that many, many people find Hakila useful today. And really, like a lot of this, building on the foundations of the cooldown manager that just came out in 11.1.5, kind of reflects us hearing people in the community telling us that they feel like they need to seek out these third-party resources just to play the game at like a.
That's what I thought. So yes, that's exactly what I thought. So when I was talking to World of Warcraft, not exactly talking to, but giving comments to World of Warcraft creators on is add-ons necessary to play the game. A whole bunch of them said yes. You gotta have some add-ons to play the game. To me, that is still nuts.
Baseline effective level in competitive content, and us asking, like, is that where we want the game to be in the long term, and what can we do to build in native solutions to many of these problems?
Like the base construct of it, there is this will help you learn what you're supposed to do if you are new, and then there is hey, I don't want to be the best player at this game. That's totally fine. I play it for a different reason. I want to collect things. I want to understand the story. I want to quest. I want to level, right? And I don't want to feel like I can go into any content and I just don't really know what I'm doing. I feel anxious about.
In Lord of the Rings Online, people feel the same way, but they create alts for crafting. Believe it or not, in Lord of the Rings Online, there's a whole bunch of people that makes alts for crafting. Or basically, carry alts, if you will, for, let's say your main's inventory is full. You create an alt, you give stuff in the mail to your alt, and they'll put stuff in there. I remember that was years ago, but I don't know how it is now. But yeah, some people create alts to look at the story. Some people create alts to craft. Some people make alts to play in a band, because believe it or not, you gotta be a minstrel in order for you to play instruments. and mentor other classes that cannot do instruments to play instruments. So yeah, people in Lord of the Rings Online can create alts for everything. Heck, even perhaps make build their house. You get the idea. Like put furniture and stuff. You get the idea.
That like you have the ability to just be like, okay, well at least Blizzard's got me. You know, I can have something at a base level where I can press one button and just kind of hang out and play the game. I have one question about the actual rotational thing. So is that going to like change with talents? So like let's say, is it going to work off the base talent build, or let's say you select a talent that now moves a AoE button into your single target rotation? Is it going to be smart enough or planned to be smart enough to incorporate a bunch of different potential talent builds?
The goal is that it's aware of your talents, and the logic is conditional based on what you do or don't have talented. As with, this is going to be something.
Okay, I'm sorry for pausing again because I have a question about talents. To me, as a Lord of the Rings Online player, how in the world do you World of Warcraft players do it? I have seen pictures, I have seen videos of people having talents in multiple specs. I mean, talent points in multiple specs. Like, basically, as a Lotro player, you choose, like, how can I explain it? There's 3 tabs. Like, I am going to call them 3 pages. And in those 3 pages, page 1 could be your DPS spec. Page 2 could be your tank spec, and page 3 is your healing spec. So basically, okay, how can I explain this? Okay, let's say I am Captain Redline as my primary spec, my page 1 spec. I had to put points in the red line because it takes 1 class trait point to do that, or in World of Warcraft case, talent points. But let's just say that if I filled up my Captain Redline tree and I still have extra points because the because the points can also be based upon level. And so I decided that my secondary trait spec next to the red line is blue line. And so that would cost me 2 class trait points because it is not my primary spec line. So yeah. So basically my DPS spec is all DPS, but it's also part healer. So maybe at some point that there's going to be a level squish to be able to reduce the hybrid trait and the hybrid specs that a Lotro player can do. I'm not exactly sure. Someday there will be a level squish, but I don't know when. Because the max level in Lord of the Rings Online is, from what I remember, 150. And I'm only at 131 on my main.
And that continues to evolve. We may not have every single possible permutation accounted for in the version that we roll out with, but it should still be very useful in that form to everyone, and we'll just get refined from there. Similar to the cooldown manager that we know is like, that is a first take at this. We have plans to add much more customization, much more functionality to that over time as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting feature individually. The thing that's most exciting to me is in the broader context of the cooldown manager, of all these other edit mode changes that have come out. There was a time 5 years ago in WoW where if you were just getting into the game, there was an intimidating list of these are the add-ons that you need, and if you're not using...
Yes, that's what that was what I'm talking about. The list of add-ons is insane in World of Warcraft. You gotta have all those add-ons for you to enjoy the game. Which me, as a Lord of the Rings Online player, I don't have to think about add-ons. Like, Maybe I really want to have Reshade, which is a graphics plugin that once again I only use for screenshots and for increasing the quality of my streams. And perhaps a UI skin. And that's it. But when it comes to World of Warcraft, I've been hearing that you gotta have like weak auras, you gotta have this whatever this DPS tracker is, you gotta have a bunch of other stuff in order for you to enjoy the game. Which to me, that's nuts.
Using these, you're kind of worse, right? Like you're noticeably worse. If you can't track your group member's major cooldown, right? Like you're.
Wait, you do that in World of Warcraft? You actually do that in World of Warcraft. You track another person's cooldown with add-ons. Oh man. In Lord of the Rings Online, you would actually get kicked from the group by doing that. From what I remembered years ago, that it was the case that you would get kicked out of the group for tracking another person, for using, you would be kicked out of the group for tracking another person's cooldown. Because it basically makes people a bit ticked off because it's like people were trying to have a chill time on the stream. I mean, not chill time on the stream, but chill time in the game, chill time in a raid or something like that. They do not want to have to add the stress to their role if you're tracking their cooldown. You don't do that. Like, if a healer is doing their best to heal, the healer does not want a person to be like, hey man, when are you going to use that cooldown? It's been 4 minutes since the last time you used that cooldown. Hey mister, don't forget to use that cooldown. Excuse me, ma'am. It has been about 5 minutes since the last time you used that cooldown. Can you please use the cooldown? Hey, red light captain. The enemy is halfway down. Can you please use your Oathbreaker Shame cooldown? And then I'll be like, yeah, but I'm doing it under my terms because Oathbreaker Shame has a long cooldown. Like, once I use it, I have to wait. From what I recall, last time I remembered it was 15 to 20 minutes for me to use it again. So I had to so the group would have to really go ham on the DPS within a few seconds before the Oathbreaker Shame wears out. So normally I would use Oathbreaker Shame when a raid boss is is more than halfway defeated. Like last moment DPS burst damage all the way. When I use Oathbreaker Shame because it only lasts a few seconds.
You're worse at Mythic Plus than somebody who is, right? And it seems like the goal that has been accomplished with a lot of these things that have been coming into the base UI is you can use those add-ons if you want, but we now have a native way to the game where you don't have to get an add-on.
Which is awesome.
That is pretty much exactly our long-term philosophical goal here, right? Like, add-ons are amazing. The things that the community has done.
Once again, please be careful on what you install on your PC. Mods or add-ons, etc. could potentially have viruses in them.
Over the last 20 years, to allow people to experience different aesthetics, different functionality, have information available at their fingertips. Like, that is a huge part of WoW's success, and we don't question or want to undermine that for a moment. At the same time, like as you said, ideally it is about what do you want? How do you prefer to have things presented to you, and not what do you have to do? What is a group mate or raid leader or whatever telling you you must download? Or if you ask people, you know, hey, how can I get better?
Okay. Okay, as a Lord of the Rings Online player, as far as I know, in all my time as a raiding captain, I have never heard a person say for me to mandatory download this add-on. I have never been in a group that tells me I had to download certain add-ons before the raid starts or before joining a group. Things like that is frowned upon in Lord of the Rings Online, from what I remember. Maybe things change these days, I don't know, but it was frowned upon back in the day.
I'm really struggling at this. The first answer shouldn't be, well, download this add-on, and this add-on, otherwise you're doing it wrong. Because that's starting to get into that mandatory place, whether we like it or not. So yeah, I think, you know, longer term, these initiatives kind of fit into part of, you know, how we're thinking about the role of add-ons in WoW. You know, as we can probably all agree, today, there is a sense that if you want to really be the best you can, if you want to play competitive content, there are certain add-ons that are required, that are simply going to improve your success over not having them, period. We would like to get away from that being the case. And I think I'd love to...
Okay, as far as I know, the only competitive thing that I could possibly think of in Lord of the Rings Online is basically PvMP, which is player versus monster player. You're basically going to be fighting the polar opposites of yourselves. Like, for instance, I am a captain main in Lord of the Rings Online. So the polar opposite of a captain is a war leader. War leaders buff their allies, but at the same time debuff us, the freeps, or also called free peoples, and we call the people who plays as monsters as creeps because they are rather creepy, especially the spider creep. But anyways, yeah, that's the only competitive thing that I can possibly think of in Lord of the Rings Online. Unless there is indeed events, competitions if you will, like for instance a fashion show competition where people can show off their gear in fashion. But that is a player event. It is not like a mandatory. It's not like a game event. The only other possible thing I could possibly think of for competitions is possibly maybe even housing competitions. Well, once again, that's another player event. You and your kin or you and your neighbors can have a competition to see who can decorate their house the best, and then everyone in the group would have a say and grade their houses, etc. It could be like that, but in Lord of the Rings Online, as far as I know, there is not much competition in the game. Except for possible PvMP, but that's it. Oh yeah, and also the PvMP is known as the Etimors, or the Moors. And basically it is like a open world arena. You do not, in World of Warcraft, I have been hearing things about people queuing up for arena in PvP. In Lord of the Rings, we don't do that. You go to the Etimors, you leave GV, which is also known as Gilead Virag, and you just go down there and hope that the creeps does not find you first, because you want to find them before they find you. and odds are the creeps would group up on you. And so, yeah, it's one of those typical things where, well, creeps do that as well. Especially knowing that the action is pretty darn slow during the day. But when it's at night, that's when things get crazy. But if you want to do 1 versus 1s or 2 versus 2s, etc., etc., all you have to do is to jump in front of the creep twice. And if the creep accepts the challenge, then the creep would jump back then the creep would jump twice right back at you. And then the challenge starts. But when it comes to 1 versus 1s, you cannot have any buffs that does not belong to you. Otherwise, you would be KOS, which means kill on sight. So if I am a captain and a friend with me is a burglar, the burglar cannot have captain buffs when it comes to doing a 1 versus 1. So there's no queue. There's no queuing up or anything in Lord of the Rings Online PvMP. At some point there is supposed to be a new update to PvMP where they're going to be adding siege weapons, which would be a cool idea. So then capturing the lumber camp would definitely give us a reason to capture it. So we can build siege machines and we just take them to lugs and stuff like that to defend our keeps or storm the creep keeps, especially the center of the map, Tall Escarnan. That is when things get insane.
See a WoW one day where you can still customize the aesthetic look of your UI, you can have information and quest helper.
Yeah, once again, I'm going to have like a UI skin in Lord of the Rings Online.
And all the other things that you might want to have to make your experience a bit more seamless. But that at the end of the day, when you're in competitive content, when you're queuing up for a rated PvP match, when you're going into a high key, when you're trying to get a first kill on a raid boss,
Oh, the high key, yeah, that would be Lotro delving. Yeah, I guess that could also be considered competitive. But as far as I know, there is no world first when it comes to Lord of the Rings Online, as far as I know.
there isn't the sense that you are, just holding yourself back if you're not using specific tools. We know that there's a lot of work to do to get to a place where that could be the reality. The first steps really are going to be continuing to build up the just right out of the box functionality that World of Warcraft offers to shrink that gap. But at the same time, I think we're aware that at the very end of this process, we probably are going to have to rein in some of the functionality that add-ons currently have to do like real-time in-combat problem solving specifically, where it's like automating, coordination, communication.
Okay, yeah, in Lord of the Rings Online, you can actually get banned from using, how can I say it? What was that thing called? It's something about depth. Yeah, in Reshade, if I am indeed correct, there was a thing called depth something. And basically what that does is, basically, let's say that you are a warg creep, the polar opposite of a burglar, and you stealth your way around to find your prey, but an add-on would help you by accident, of course, because Reshade basically enhances the game's visuals. May have accidentally exposed a warg, which is not supposed to happen. You can actually get banned from using that. because you're messing with the game's mechanics.
In ways that are always going to be better than anything the UI could natively provide you, as long as they remain possible.
Yeah, so that moves us into like raid bosses, where I don't want to name any names, but there are people who have optimized a little bit of their own fun out of the game sometimes. I don't know where any of them might be sitting. They could be anywhere. They could be in this room with us.
Hey, man.
In Lotro, it is hard to optimize fun. Trust me, it is hard. Like, after all, your level is level 150. It's impossible to optimize the fun out of the game. Unless, of course, that you do what an old school thing would have done, which was to power level by going to sword halls. But that's only when you reach level 60 or 65, because it deals with the Merquid expansion. And then there's warg pens. People do in fact power level when it comes to warg pens as well. But as far as I know, people normally go on over to South 3, join a band, listen to a band, and have a chill time in South 3. Yeah, so it's pretty much impossible to optimize the fun, because there's also housing you can also do in Lord of the Rings Online. Then there is kin events. Your kin event might want to do a daily raid or weekly raid, or possibly have one of your kin mates to be a chicken, and then you get that chicken to Mordor. Something like that.
I am the like number one. Let's just YOLO this. Let's just do the fight. Let's make it work. And then sometimes it gets to, let's try to make something that could be 95% successful, 100 or 99, right? And there's a lot of frustration with the tech involved with that. I would definitely be. I think a lot of the raiding community would be pretty for that. You know, I think a well-designed mechanic that the game giving you enough information to solve this on your own realistically. A lot of the times the community will just
Oh, I have been hearing stories about weak auras.
use one because it's like what everyone else uses, it gets you in the same place. But if that doesn't exist and the game is giving you that information, it's objectively better, right?
Okay, that reminds me during the times of the first time I did the Orthanc raid. I did not use an add-on like weak auras for me to find out what the boss mechanics are. Basically, what me and the group that I was in during my first time of Orthanc is that we wiped a couple times in order to figure out how to kick the boss's butt. And then once we reached Saruman, we basically have to get some people who's going to be doing the potentially dangerous thing of how can I say it? Memorizing the light color on Saruman's staff, because that is very important, because everyone in the group who has a special ring must press their ring button when it comes down to the color. Like for instance, one is red, orange, blue, yellow. So then you would have 4 people that would do that. But if you truly mess up, you have to start over. You have to start the boss raid over again. Like, you did every other wing, but in order for you to defeat Saruman, you have to memorize the colors and then match those colors, and then after you're done matching those colors, the rings would break, and then you defeated Saruman. Well, not exactly defeat Saruman, because he basically says enough of this, and then he just pushes you out of Isengard. And then that is it. You did the Reign of War thing. I mean, I definitely gotta try out the Dragon raid. I definitely want to get that awesome cloak.
And even if you are doing it very well, manually, it's always going to be better to do it perfectly in a competitive situation. I mean, having watched, your raid leading, for example, over many, many years over the Race to World First, like years ago, you would call much more stuff verbally.
Very
like
true.
Going back to, Legion, BFA era, whereas nowadays it seems like if there is something you're calling repeatedly on attempts, the first thing you're doing is asking if, hey, can we automate this and get me out of the business of talking, which seems like it might be less enjoyable for you as a raid leader.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, if we're talking about that, I could talk all day about that. Yeah. No. I mean, I felt like you certainly had more of an impact when you had the ability to, influence the fight more. But the reality is just getting some way to automate it for your players is just better. It is funny. Like when I
automate the fighting. Again, if I am indeed correct, did he say automate the fight?
Do that now, I think, what else can I be doing with my time? I could be like looking at other ways to optimize, and it's purely for the sake of getting better. So yeah, for my own enjoyment, yeah, that's sweet. Let's do that. I'm trying to wonder also about those kind of mechanics. So like what bosses have existed in my head, I think in the past couple of years, there's not many, but have been defined by when we're progressing this boss, we feel like maybe we're progressing a weak aura. Something like Brood Twister or Echo of Neltharion or Jailer maybe was one of the first ones, right? Mm-hmm. And those mechanics, I feel like, could not have been done or probably would have been nerfed without.
I have seen videos of those raids. Those are insane. So much stuff going around at the same time. Like, jeez, man, how can anyone keep up? So maybe it'll be a good idea to tone it down a little bit. Maybe toss certain mechanics in every now and then. But not exactly like you gotta go here, you gotta go here. You got this red light going down here, you're gonna go over that way. Put this red light going down this way, you're gonna go over that way. Yeah, that'll be too much. Yeah.
Without weak auras or having that effectiveness of that reduced. What do you do as a fight designer now? Do you I know you're obviously like really passionate about raiding. You've raided for a really long time. What do you have to avoid those kind of assignment mechanics? Are there things in game you can use to like naturally sort out those things? Like, do you give more time for the mechanics? Like do you have to stray away from assignments in general because the community has just, whether you like it or not, has like trained themselves to have something solve that for them? Do you have to like go back into like a more simple version of that? Do you find other ways to make fights difficult? There's obviously a bunch of ways to do that.
The way we design encounters has been influenced in significant ways by the way players use add-ons. I know.
Okay. Oh, jeez. So that's what it is, huh? So you're creating raids that are more complex and has more stuff in it because of add-ons. So whatever the add-on does, the game counters that. Or combines it with that. You're basically making it necessary to have those add-ons.
The community sometimes speculates that, this was built clearly to require an add-on. I can say that's never the case. No encounter designer is ever sitting around saying, all right, we're going to make this mechanic, and then players will write this weak aura to solve it this way. All right, mission accomplished, let's ship the boss. But when we're thinking about the overall pacing of a fight, the tuning, we might get feedback on a fight that it feels like there isn't enough going on, when in actuality, there are 4 or 5 mechanics going on, but add-ons are largely compartmentalizing and
Yeah, 4 or 5 add-ons, yes. I mean, 4 or 5 stuff going on at the same time in the middle of the raid, yeah. I could potentially understand why they would need, like weak auras or something like that, when the fights themselves makes them require to have it because of so much stuff going on at once.
making it so that most players don't have to think about them most of the time. And then players give us feedback that, hey, this fight felt a little bit slow, like I was just punching the boss for 3 minutes. And so then maybe we add another mechanic in the next iteration of that, or a similar encounter. We get to a higher overall complexity space where, there's just, you look at the dungeon journal and you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and maybe half of it doesn't even matter because add-ons are going to handle it for you. I think that's not a great place for things to land. It also definitely ties our hands in some ways. Like, I think we do fewer coordination mechanics than we used to. Like, there used to be, like, if you look at old school.
Yeah, it would be awesome to have more coordination mechanics, like what me and my group did with Orthanc. Have the raid leader call out the colors of Saruman's staff, and have the other players in the group repeat the colors on their rings in order for the rings to break. And also, everybody, it looks like this is going to be it for the video. I'm hoping I did not make this video too long, but perhaps I should have made this into a reaction stream. But maybe if you all want me to, I can make like a part 2 or part 3, etc. of this reaction video. Please let me know in the comment section.